We are so pleased to have Rebecca Fairbairn, who is the director of UKRI India, joining us today. And I will now hand over to Professor Jane Falkingham, who is the Vice President International at the University of Southampton, and also she has multiple portfolios. She is also the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. She's also the Executive Director of the India Center for Inclusive Growth and Sustainable Development. So we are looking forward to what is known as a friendly, warm, interactive conversation. Jane, over to you, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabu. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for this conversation with Rebecca Fairbairn, who's the director of UKRI India. I've known Rebecca for over a decade, and I think we've first met each other actually at the High Commission in Delhi when she was the deputy director of the UKRI India when the office had just been set up. And then she moved back to the UK and took up a position at the Economic and Social Research Council, where she was the head of our infrastructure and data investments. And as many of you know, that's an area where Southampton has a huge amount of strength and expertise, and we work together on a number of important inquiries into the future of longitudinal studies. And now she moved back again to India to take up a really exciting role as the director of the UKRI office there. And I managed to, just before lockdown, I managed to sneak a visit to Delhi, where Rebecca gave me this fantastic water bottle. I think these are very rare, so I'm really delighted by that. But I'm really thrilled to have her here today, and she is a great friend of Southampton, and she was here actually for the inauguration of our India Centre. So Rebecca, welcome back to Southampton. I wish that you were actually here physically with us on the sofa, but we're delighted to have you. And this is really an informal conversation, and we want to allow time for colleagues to ask you all sorts of questions. But I'm just going to kick off by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about what UKRI does in India? What's your role and what does UKRI do?
Absolutely, Jane, and thank you very much for your introduction. I am amazed at your memory stretching back all of those years. And I think, though, there's one point missing in our relationship from your recount, and that's the time when I had a spell in doctoral training. At that point, you were, I think, heading up Southampton's ESRC doctoral training, a centre at the time. So I feel I'm following you around in your various roles at Southampton, engaging at different times. And it's great to be back with you when you're covering this senior and prestigious post, covering international generally. And I'm so glad that India features highly on Southampton's interests there. So what does UKRI do in India? It's a big question to start with. UKRI, as I'm sure all of you know, is the UK's major public sector funder of research and innovation. But we are more than just a national funder. Our vision is for an outstanding research and innovation system in the UK that gives everyone the opportunity to contribute and to benefit, that enriches lives locally, nationally and internationally. So we're a globally facing organisation, and we want to support our excellent researchers and innovators to combine their expertise with the best in the world. And that's kind of the background to what I do here, what my team does here. UKRI has 4 offices overseas in the most strategically important geographies for UK research and innovation partnership. They are North America, Europe, China and India. And our focus really is on working with government research and innovation funders to build funder-to-funder collaborative partnerships for our communities and to support policy development that will make it easier for everyone to partner in the future. Over here in India, we work to build those UKRI Government of India partnerships, and we work with the wider UK government network here in India to position education, research and innovation, really all of the things that universities like Southampton do, right at the heart of our relationship between the two countries. So we work with the Science and Innovation Network here. I think a lot of you will have heard of them, which focuses on building partnerships and collaborations between India and the UK. SIN officers work with local science and innovation community members and support the work that the UK does more generally in research and innovation. And that's an absolutely essential element of the system that allows UKRI to function so well in India. We also work with the British Council, which supports education and the arts and cultural partnership and delivers the UK India Education Research Initiative, UKRI, not to be confused with UKRI, great naming by people, which provides specific opportunities to build partnerships in the UK and India. So what we do here really is work with the councils of UKRI and the centre of UKRI, various parts of UK government in the UK and also over here in India. And we also work with Indian government funders here so that we can create opportunities for a partnership right across the remit of our interests in research and innovation.
Brilliant, thanks for that overview. I think many of the people on this call will be really interested to learn a little bit more about how you can support partnerships. So if people have ideas, how can they engage with UKRI India, and can you give some practical examples perhaps of how you support partnerships?
Absolutely. I think this is a fairly short question that I could speak to for hours and hours. And again, wishing that I was with you physically in Southampton, it would be great to be able to have the conversations with people and hear their interests, so that, you know, it's these conversations that really help us develop thinking for the future, as well as to point people in the direction of where there might be opportunities. So I'll talk in general terms about this. I'm conscious that in doing that, I'm not talking specifically about our current context. COVID-19 has put a very different spin on things for everyone. And I know that we're all working in ways that we didn't anticipate a year ago, even 3 months ago, and are under a lot of personal and professional pressure at the moment. So I'm going to speak generally about UKRI opportunities and how things work, so that you can all understand the basic principles that we work to. Do know that we are flexing our support for the current new normal, but I'll start with the general. So back to the question, we offer many opportunities for international collaboration. Some of these are strategic. So at the moment, we have a call with the Department for Biotechnology. In fact, my teammates just now over here in India are coordinating a panel at this very moment on the COVID-19 call. So there's a UKRI DBT call that closed at the end of the year, and we are making decisions over the next few days around which proposals will be put forward for funding. Ordinarily, we spend around £20 million a year in initiatives like that, working with different funders from across the Government of India system. I think, though, that overlooks the more bread and butter way that we have of supporting international partnership. So around 30% of the work that research councils do, 30% of their investment includes international collaboration anyway. So we do additional things in the office here to work specifically with India and find specific opportunities. But through UKRI business as usual, through things like the doctoral training centres or partnerships or centres for doctoral training, there is inbuilt funding to help support internationalisation and building partnerships and experiences. And also standard UKRI research funding mechanisms more often than not include international research collaboration in one way or another. So many councils have an international co-investigator policy, so you can submit to a responsive mode call in the area of your choice, including international, in this instance, Indian partners for project partnership. I would say that for both of these examples, your research office knows the ins and outs and can really help provide you with guidance on how to move forward. And in saying that, I think it's important just to flag that India similarly has a lot of opportunities for funding in this way. The Government of India is increasingly trying to promote internationally collaborative research, just in the same way as UKRI is. And so I think it's important that when you are looking to build partnerships, you work with your, in this instance, Indian partners to really explore the opportunities that exist on both sides through standard mechanisms to help get you to where you want to be in building partnerships. That said, there are also specific network building opportunities that you can use, which sign up to the UKRI funding opportunities website, and you'll have receive into your inbox opportunities around those. But beyond that, I think working with your colleagues and your partners to really build relationships and ideas, to talk to people like yourself, Jane, and Sabu, people at the centre, and in other international funding roles within the university context in the UK. There are links all over the place to help feed in. If you've got a good idea, talk about it. If you can spot an area in the system that you don't feel is well supported, talk about it. And that's how we will make sure that we're exploring opportunities to support in different ways, ways that we've not thought about before. So events like this, for example, and the questions that I hope to receive later on will feed into my thinking, and will make sure that I'm feeding back into the overall system to make sure that we are thinking differently and creatively about how we can support the partnerships that we need.
Brilliant. So that's a challenge out to us really to think about areas that we want to work in. And but I'm going to just turn that back to you, if I may, just for a moment, that if you were here and you were sitting with a group of early career researchers or with PhD students, and they were thinking about what they wanted to do research on for the next 3 or 4 years, what advice would you give to them about priority areas? What should they be thinking about? What are the big ticket items that you see for research collaboration with India?
That's a really nice question, and I'm afraid I'm going to cop out in the answer again. My genuine advice on this is to focus on the areas that you're most interested in, rather than specific current priority areas. Certainly through my long career with UKRI or the councils that sit under it, I have seen funding opportunities come and go. When they come, you have to move really quickly to submit in time. Often deadlines are shorter than we as the funder wish them to be. So you need to build your relationship and build them where you have genuine interest, a genuine click with a partner that you want to work with. Really develop that interest, and that positions you then for opportunities that come up in the future, and to make sure that in instances like this, you can say, do you know, I'm thinking about research in this area. I really think there's a gap. And it's those early conversations and flags that really help us as a responsive and collaborative funding organisation to make sure that we're not overlooking those areas. So of course you can look at the UKRI delivery plans. I should plug those, and there are themes in there. And of course, similar for India, I think if you look in Indian government funder websites or the principal scientific advisors' missions, you can see where India is really focusing there. But go with your heart, focus on what you think is the most interesting, the most important, and build your partnerships around that.
That's great advice, actually, because if you're not interested in doing things, then you're never going to have the passion to follow them through. So I think that's really great advice. Just thinking about the policy environment in India. I mean, I've been following with great interest the new education policy and how that's been moving, but perhaps colleagues on this call might be less familiar with that. What opportunities do you think are opening up in India that we in the UK should really be aware of?
Okay, so I think the first thing I need to say is that the opportunities with India and in India are endless. So beware before reading the National Education Policy or indeed the new Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. I'll give you some highlights just now, but the opportunities really are endless, and that's part of what I love about India. So as all of you know, being on this call, India really is emerging as a scientific heavyweight. And what I've really enjoyed seeing since I've come back to India less than 2 years ago now, although feels like in a different world as it was before COVID, India has been working over the last couple of years really to build policy frameworks to propel itself further and faster forward. There are, as you've said, the National Education Policy, which outlines a radical and ambitious shift across education, including higher education, postgrad, PhD and lifelong learning. In fact, I think that's an important thing to note. Because it's education, it might mean that some people don't engage with it thinking that they're looking for research, but this is a real foundational policy document that's important to look at for anyone interested in education in the broadest sense, research, the work of universities, and indeed entrepreneurship and beyond. So the NEP also touches on the creation of the National Research Foundation, which has been long trailed. Indeed, we've been engaging with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office and the PM's advisory group on this for a few years now. But in India's most recent budget, the NRF got some cash. So it's around £5 billion over 5 years. And what I think is really exciting about that is that this is not instead of the Indian government funding structures that are already in place, it's on top of. And so what that does then is provide opportunity and cash behind the work of the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office to really push forward in coordination and broader policy work and delivering administrative efficiencies, which I know we're all excited about on both. The second big policy area I think it's worth looking at, and again, this connects to my point on the ambition for the NEP. India's policy documents aren't boring. They are ambitious and they are thought-provoking, and they really are worth the read. So the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020 to 2021 will be the fifth of these. It is still under development and obviously has been reconceptualized a bit with our COVID situation. The current draft is on the Department for Science and Technology's website, and it has been under extensive consultation and review. I think they've had over 300 different review activities to help bring the community's thinking and ideas into the shaping of this policy, which is it's extraordinary when you think about the amount of consultation. And again, it's worth a look. So my summary of both of these documents is that they talk to India's ambition for development generally. They make it clear that India sees education and research, the system and the outputs of those, as absolutely critical to becoming a developed nation. There is a lot on structure and regulation. I recognise my job as a bureaucrat and I do like a bit of structure and regulation and some rules, but I love how India talks about the need for light and tight. I think that's something we should all aspire to. The documents celebrate India's pride in its ancient culture of multidisciplinary knowledge and its desire to rekindle that. And I think that makes India's approach really far more mature than you can see in some other countries. So the focus isn't just on STEM, it is much broader than that. It's about people, it's well, in fact, even the National Research Foundation, 2 of the pillars are around social science and arts and humanities, and there are only 4 pillars. And I think that demonstrates the commitment really for these policies and these actions to connect to what people need research for and thinking about how people engage with research and with knowledge. They also provide insights into India's view on emerging areas of focus in case you want to take a more tactical approach to partnership building. There's everything from AI and data, genomics, agriculture. As I said, there's a lot about looking beyond STEM and making sure there's holistic education and looking more broadly at research and at science. They also focus on upping the quality of education so that students will come to India. And I think that's an exciting area to look at for the UK. What can we do to encourage more of our students to come to India, as well as students from India to come to the UK? And indeed, they talk about facilitating top 100 research institutions globally to come and set up campus here. Now that obviously includes Southampton, whether or not that's an approach you'd want to take. It's good to know that there's the facilitation in mind there. So I guess I'd summarise just by saying that all of this means that now really is an exciting time to build partnerships with India. And I think that's at the personal level, you know, if you are a PhD student or a researcher or indeed innovator already that wants to build those relationships in your own area of interest, but also structurally. As I'd said, there's wisdom in India's new education, research and innovation related policies. It's apparent India can see that to take the next steps in its journey, and those steps are big. You know, India's scientific output over the last, I think, 3 years has risen by 50%. We are talking about massive change and growth here. But it knows that to take the next steps, it has to build a system from the early education years upwards, and it needs to really reshape and strengthen the university system, creating much more of a focus on research and indeed working with universities beyond the top tier. And I think it also makes clear that India is up for international partnership and can really see the opportunities for working in that way.
Brilliant, thank you, Rebecca. So I know we want to leave a lot of time for questions, so I just thought that I'd finish by asking you a bit more of a personal question. So we know that India is very close to your heart. I'm just wondering if you could give us a little bit of insights into what are the things that you've taken the most pleasure from over the past few years, whether it's a curry in the north or the vibrance of Bombay or the lovely beaches in the south. Tell us a little bit about what you've taken from India on a personal note. Share your secrets with us.
This is, I think, the hardest question you could ask me, Jane. I don't know quite how to narrow it down. India is very dear to my heart. I don't know what it is about India, but I do keep being pulled back time and time again. I think one of my favourite things about India is that it's a country in which anything can happen, and it could happen at any time. Indeed, if it's going to happen, it will probably happen very, very quickly. And I love that excitement and that agility and that movement. I think rather than something specific to place or to pleasure, my favourite things about India are around relationships. I think that's what people need to succeed in India, is relationships, to get insight. And talking about insight, you know, it sounds like there is one insight to gain, but there's not. India is huge and complex and colourful and creative, and having people to give you perspectives and help steer you through that and help you enjoy it are really important. And the food, of course, keeps me going. They call it here in India, for UK government people who come to India, they call it a 2-stone post, because everyone leaves 2 stones heavier than they arrived. The food is too good and none of us can say no to it.
That's fantastic. I really like that, the two-stone post, and I love your 3 C's as well: complex, colourful, and creative. I think that's great. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to capture if people's hands go up, but maybe people can put questions in the chat and I can call on them. Or
so Jane, there are a number of questions already on.
Right.
I think, yeah. So,
excellent, Sabu.
Yeah. So I think perhaps we could start with the first question, which is really on, is there a specific incentive or calls to start new partnerships between UK and India?
Specific incentives. I guess there's specific drivers, maybe more than incentives. So what we do is work with the budget holders within each of the councils. That might be fund budget holders or thematic budget holders. And we work with equivalent partners over here in India to explore where there are either complementary skills or gaps that we can fill for each other, or areas of joint interest, and then we work from there up. Now, a lot of that comes from knowing where there is interest and opportunity, and my teammates working to develop that from the UK side, but some of it also comes from us engaging with academics and innovators on both the UK and India, hearing ideas, and then just having friendly conversations with our partners in UKRI UK and over here in India. So much of it, as I'd said before, really is based on relationships and just having those open conversations, and then seeing where the chips fall in the context around us, where we can open up purse strings to move forward. So the drivers really are about what matters most to the UK and to India, and getting the timing right.
Brilliant. So I've got a specific question from Radha Boya, who says, are the studentships supported by UKRI still open?
By UKRI? I will need to check, and we'd need to have a look on the UKRI website. I do know that we're coming to the end of the phase 3 of UKRI, and phase 4 is being scoped as we speak. So there might be something more to come soon. I do know that our Indian partners over here are really keen to work through the UKRI scheme and process to build opportunities for PhD partnerships. So this is something that we are looking at as in the general system.
Yeah, and I would just say for Indian colleagues on the call, I would also just alert you to the fact that the UKRI doctoral training schemes have now had the cap on the number of students who can come from international lifted. So certainly from the ESRC perspective, I think we can now have up to 30% of our studentships can be awarded to international scholars. I believe that's the same across the other UKRI schemes. So you can actually look to apply for PhDs in the UK funded by UKRI sources. So there's a comment here about enormous fees charged by UK universities for PhD students are an obstacle to study. Is UKRI aware of this problem and what can be done about it? And Malcolm, I could just say that that's exactly what UKRI have just done, is actually lift the quota on that. And certainly at Southampton, we've undertaken to create a bursary for the difference between the home fee and the international fee, so that the students themselves don't actually incur any cost if you win that studentship. Let's go back to questions for Rebecca. There's one here about, is there any age limit for applying for UKRI funding?
No, there's not. Do you know, I was actually looking at this today around PhDs. There's not an age limit in the standard policy for applying for PhD either. So good job for all of us who aren't 21.
Absolutely, lifelong learning. And we have a question from Gotham apologies if I don't pronounce your surname correctly, Paduletti, CEO and Managing Director of Biodesign Innovation Labs. We are a medical device and healthcare technology company developing affordable and accessible portable ventilators and respiratory support devices for hospitals and ambulances. Are there any funding opportunities for startups in India to partner with UKRI through funding opportunities in critical care, emergency and transport ventilation?
There are funding opportunities for innovation partnerships through Innovate UK, which is one of the 9, had to suddenly recount there, one of the 9 UKRI councils. There are a number of different sectors of interest, and there has been an awful lot recently related to COVID, to health, and specifically to ventilation. So do take a look on the Innovate UK website.
Great, thanks. And now I can see Craig has got his hand up. So Craig Hutton, you can ask your question yourself and turn the camera on, please, Craig.
Okay. Hello. Thank you very much indeed, Rebecca, for that. That was very interesting. And I share your passion for India. I've worked there on a number of occasions. The thing I really wanted to is as much a comment and seeing your position on, obviously impact is a key driver, how this research sits with policymakers or decision makers more broadly, perhaps in civil society. I recently was engaged in our department in our school in some discussion around methods of policy impact in a development context and certainly including India. And a couple of things came up. One of them in the first instance is there a potential to have an extension to standard projects, a sort of thinner element of a standard project, less funded, but purely about the implementation of the research? Because we're often finding that through best intentions in the world, researchers work for 3 years, modelers love to model, they don't stop modeling, you can't stop them sometimes. So you're getting, and what you end up with is a product you're very happy with, but the project's coming to an end and people move on. And I'm wondering whether there couldn't be a more structured or systematic approach where there's an element that says at the end of your projects, there is a 1-year frame, less funded, fewer people, but you will be engaged in impact. You will look at, going around the country, engagement, using the resources, amplifying your findings. And I just wonder whether that had resonates at all. I certainly think we need to do something in that area.
Yeah, it absolutely does resonate, Craig. I think you're asking a really important question. I think we often focus, we collectively here in the virtual room, on securing funding for research, doing the research, and then getting it all done, and then the what next kind of slips from the end, and that's funding as well as writing research proposals and undertaking the research itself. We've been in UKRI round the block on this a few times in different ways, so thinking about how we can support that. On the one hand, I think the answer that I'm supposed to give is that we should be thinking about impact from the outset as projects are structured.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In reality, I know that can't always happen. And in fact, once you start a project, the context that you're operating in and your understanding of the research that you're doing will change what's
evolves with the project. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I guess, is squared when you're working with an international partner, because the context is likely to become even more changeable. That said, I know that through UKRI funding anyway, the standard processes do have flexibility built in so that you can be putting costs in for those. Though, if we are, offering an opportunity to bid for a 3-year project, you will be focusing that 3 years on research, yes, on the what comes next. We have set up impact acceleration accounts. I know there's a few different types of those from different parts of UKRI that operate slightly differently within a range of different universities just now. But that's one of the routes to be able to support this sort of additional work through. So there's provided into the university, and the universities then look at what works best for them or what's most important strategically for them, so that they can build on the whole UKRI funded research, sometimes not just UKRI funded research, to add that extra time and provide that extra support to build partnerships. I'm aware of a few projects in India, not through Southampton, but only because I'd had a different conversation with a different university recently, where they'd used their Impact Accelerator Award specifically for this with India. So that might be one approach. But I do hear what you're saying, and I feel that just now, as we are going to be engaging more and more with India around that policy, structural space, how research works, that this is a good time for us to be looking at different approaches to impact and maybe trying things a bit different. I mean, I can't promise anything, but this is this is an area dear to my heart, and I'm interested and keen to think about it differently. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's lots of questions and comments coming up in the chat with offers from colleagues in India looking for collaborations, and we will definitely pick up on all of those and try and get back to you on those if there are opportunities to work with colleagues at Southampton on some of those. So for example, there's a question around collaborating on road safety and minimizing traffic accidents, which I think we're all very interested in, and we'll definitely get back to you on that. But let's have another couple of questions for Rebecca. One from Ming Jian. If you could turn your camera on and ask Rebecca your question. Ming Jian Jie, I hope. Is Ming Jiang there? If not, we'll go to Atul.
I hope I've unmuted. I don't know about the camera now.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I've done that too, I think. Oh, it takes time. I've had a few projects before, especially the UKRI ones. And I have well, my relationship with India goes back to my own student days, and especially with several IITs and the Indian Institute of Science. I know several colleagues. We often, in fact, currently, I'm doing something informally without any funding with a colleague somewhere in India. The issue is always getting support. So my question is very specific to a scheme that I was looking at. And it didn't go any further because of Brexit, essentially. There was a scheme known as Erasmus Mundus. I don't know how many know about that. I had a very successful program with 4 PhD students from Eastern Europe. And I was thinking about setting up a similar thing with India, but come Brexit, it can't be done. So my question is, I'm told that the new Turing scheme will replace the European Erasmus programs. And there were several Erasmus programs, including Erasmus Mundus, in which you have collaborative or as students visiting us at all levels. But my selfish interest is primarily in PhD students. My question is, the new Turing scheme, would that support PhD students from India visiting UK universities, e.g. Southampton University?
Thanks, Atul. That's a really good question. And I think you've pointed to an area around Brexit that we're all very interested in. The Turing scheme is being developed as we speak, and that's something that I do understand that it is being developed to support. So it's watch this space, I'm afraid. I can't give you anything more specific than that at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Is Ming Yuan still with us? Would she like to come, he or she like to come in? If not, perhaps, oh, I've got a new message coming through. If not, perhaps we can invite Professor Dr. Yogesh Goswami, who's the Dean and Dean International, and also involved in the project at ITM University Galwar. Please, Dr.
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon from my side. Myself, Dr. Yogesh Goswami, and actually we have initiated the process of MOU with the University of Southampton. So just I want to know, we are having several proposals regarding activities, some academic activities, internship program for students, and some research collaborations. So I want to know about the financial or funding that UKRI can provide us for that.
Thanks very much, Dr. Goswami. Thanks for your question. So UKRI, which is a British Council run scheme, has a website which you can see. I'm not the best person to talk to you about the details of UKRI, but UK Research and Innovation, which is helpfully named to confuse literally everyone working on UK and India partnership, UKRI, we have a number of funding opportunities, and it really depends on the area you're looking at. So I would direct you to the UKRI website, which does list funding opportunities, and from there you can look at what's available in terms of the area of research you do. I think it's probably worth talking to, I think you mentioned in the chat that you're working with a number of colleagues in Southampton, so they'll be able to steer through that. So I think it's worth looking at what UKRI can provide and also what Government of India can provide, because as well as the strategic steered schemes where we'll have a deadline and a specific specification for people to apply to, both funders on both sides work in ways that enable international collaboration and facilitate it. So it's worth looking at what we've got on both sides so that you're not held up waiting for the right call at the right time.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Got another question coming in from Saksham Shukla, who's a lecturer in Jindal Global Law School. If you'd like to ask your question.
Oh, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Hi, thank you for a brilliant session today. My question, I think Mylene already answered my question, but again, I'll just reiterate, is UKRI funding any specific area of research, or is it across various fields of research the UKRI funds?
Thanks for your question. It is a really good one. And it's, I think, my least favorite question because I can never answer it in a way that satisfies anybody's interests. So UKRI covers every single discipline. We cover everything from the creative arts through to particle physics. So there is always something happening for different areas of research. I mean, we even fund research in businesses. So it is huge. There will always be something. I think you mentioned that you were in law, which means I think your interests fit most closely probably with the Economic and Social Research Council or the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So I think it's worth you talking to partners in the UK that you'd want to work with and see if you can develop proposals that you can submit to those councils, both of whom run international co-investigator policies as part of their schemes, so that you can be really genuinely a partner in the project as opposed to it just being a UK project. All of this does require, of course, you to have the partnership in place. So we, on the whole, are funding research and innovation with the UK. We don't want that to be limited to the UK. We want it to be about international partners, the partnerships where that makes sense. But the UK part does have to fit in because we are answerable to the UK taxpayer and they want to make sure that we're funding the best in the UK too. So if you can find your partners, and there are ways of doing that, I think UKRI that was mentioned before is particularly good at this. The Science and Innovation Network that I mentioned at the beginning is really good at helping signpost to different ways to find partnerships. I know that people like Universities UK International, which is funded by the government and works closely through a number of different structures in the UK, often do events that help bring people together. And I know it's hard just now where we're all stuck in our own spare rooms, but there are opportunities emerging all of the time for partnership like that.
And I would just follow up.
Thank you very much.
Southampton actually has a partnership with OP Jindal, so please do drop Sabu or myself an email, and we will see if we're not lawyers, but we know a lot of people in the law school, and maybe we can connect you. And just to follow up from Rebecca's comment about the international investigators, UKRI have this international investigator policy where 30%, up to 30% of any grant application can go to an international co-investigator. And that can be a considerable amount of money. So for the Economic and Social Research Council, grants in responsive mode can be up to £1 million. So 30% of £1 million is £300,000 can go to the international collaborators. Of course, you have to justify why you need that money. And so there's lots of details required, but I think it's a really great opportunity for UK academics and Indian academics to work together. Some more questions coming through. Santosh would like to ask a question around tips for writing grant applications. Any tips for writing grant applications, Rebecca?
I do indeed. One of my first jobs in the research councils was actually a research manager, and I got to see the proposals as they came in, and I was responsible for peer review and helping them through the system. And really, there's nothing more exciting than being able to see research applications and the ideas coming through. My tips, and I feel like this is the sort of tip that people give you when you're preparing for an interview, but really tip number one is to read very, very carefully the specification and the rules, because usually the answers are in there. It tells you what you need to say. Surprisingly frequently, people miss a key part of the question, and that really does impact the quality of the of your submission. I think from the UK side, and Santosh, I'm not sure if you're based in the UK or if you're based here in India, but from the UK side, our universities have research offices that really can help you with this. People in those offices are absolute experts at securing funding from funders. They know exactly how to go about it, and they will be able to look with objectivity at what you're submitting, and they will look at the specification, and they'll be able to tell you which parts you've missed or where you've over-focused and where you've not picked up in enough detail on the areas that the funders are really looking for. I know that that's different in India, and I know that there aren't as many research offices or as much focus on that, but I do know that the Indian funders here are very much like UKRI in that they do make it very clear exactly what they want. And so I guess it's about doing what it says on the tin and feeding in that way. The other tip I'd have, and again, this I suppose relates to if you were applying for a job, if there's a contact person and you've got a question, ask the question. And where you can, do that by phone rather than by email, so that you've got an opportunity to have a broader conversation rather than just your specific question. We as individuals on the other end of those calls are genuinely interested in the research that we're supporting and the ideas you're coming forward with. And so do call us and talk to us, and you will hear pretty much exactly the same, read what it says on the tin, but also you'll be able to understand more about how it works in the background, and you'll be able to share your ideas with the funder too.
Great. We've got a couple of hands up. So Mahul Vora?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for the wonderful webinar. Really useful information there. I guess I don't know how many early career researchers are on the call, but one of the questions I had is, as you know, getting funding is difficult to begin with. So I was wondering if there were any calls or schemes that were specifically restricted by eligibility for Indian nationals that allows us to come to the UK to conduct our research, and if we're being sponsored by a university here. Thank you.
Could you ask that question again, please?
Sure, no problem. I have my mask on inside a building, so maybe that's gobbling things up.
It's not garbled. I just want to make sure I properly understand the question.
Oh, I see. What I mean is, as an early career researcher who wants to secure some independent funding, a partnership might not work. And what I mean is that, because I'm not affiliated with an Indian university. So are there schemes in the UKRI Indian initiative where there's a pot of money reserved for Indian nationals wishing to be independent in the UK?
So I guess the quick answer is no, but there is a longer but answer to this. So we don't have a pot of money that we specifically use. We work to build UKRI funding, which sits in the UK, into opportunities with Indian funding here in India. However, as Jane mentioned earlier, we have opened up the opportunity, or opened up the cap on international PhDs for our PhD training schemes. And I'm conscious that a number of universities in the UK are thinking about that in a kind of a longer pipeline way, and looking at what they need to do beyond the PhD to keep the people that they want to be able to keep. Now, that's not just about keeping people who have done their PhD in that university, but it's about thinking about what they can do differently in terms of offering postdoctoral opportunities too. Now, this unfortunately is, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, is different for every university, but it can make it a little bit difficult for you as an individual to find opportunities. So what I would do is go back again to my point on relationships and think about what is it you want to do and who are the best people doing it in the UK? Where do you really want to work? And start looking at making contacts in those areas. There are, it's not just about speaking to the academic necessarily as well, engage with centres or research offices of those universities, because there will be other opportunities there, particularly in the international facing universities like Southampton. I don't know if there is something like this in Southampton. I'm thinking of a couple of other universities just now where they will be able to post you to opportunities and to let you know what's happening. It's also worth just keeping an eye on, depending on your subject, the Research Council within UKRI that's specific to that, because there could well be opportunities emerging there that you would be eligible for. And we do make eligibility really clear in all of our opportunities. So I think there is a lot to look at. I'm afraid, just will take a little bit of time to work through it. And that's why I think it's finding the relationship and the partner that you want to work with, which might be not just an individual peer partner, but it might be a professor or a head of a research centre that you want to work with, someone that really inspires you, because that's where putting in the effort will lead to the relationships that you will value the most.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. And somebody in the chat has just mentioned the international Newton fellowships as well, that's a potential. I'm not sure if a call is live for them at the moment, but that has been a funding opportunity in the past, and it's definitely worth keeping an eye out. And also for colleagues in India, the Commonwealth also has scholarships and schemes, as well as the British Academy. So there are a range of funders outside of UKRI. Sorry, Rebecca, advertising other funders. We've got time for, I think, for just one final question. And Nayan Patel has posted a question. Nayan, if you're there on the call. I think people are having to drop off and go to their next meetings or go home. Is Nayan there? Yes, Nayan.
Hello, yes, thank you. It's a delight to be here today. Yes, just a simple question really. What role does UKRI play in the socio-economic impact in India, and how, by leveraging perhaps on UK companies and universities? That
is an enormous question, Nayan. Thank you very much for it. Social and economic impact is really important. I think a lot of the time governments talk about the more economic impact, but social impact is so important. And we work with our co-funders in India to determine areas of focus, and in part of that we always do look at impact. So we look at excellence with impact. I think you're asking a much bigger question really around what do we do beyond the research? Am I right?
not only research, but in terms of the leveraging on UK companies and universities to play their part in the socio-economic impact in India. And so what avenues, what channels do you have to facilitate those?
So what I really want to start doing, I've not been able to yet, but it was one of the things on the top of my list when I arrived, was to start working with, so I don't know if people know about this, but India has a fantastic policy around corporate social responsibility, where a certain percentage of funds calculated over a block of years has to be invested in corporate social responsibility activity. And one of those activities can be research. So there's a way for working with businesses, for academics, to do something that is research and also that really, really matters. And that's an area I'd love UKRI to start working more directly with Indian companies on. Now, unfortunately, I've spent a lot of my time over the last year focused almost exclusively on COVID, but I do hope that that's something we're going to start looking at much more in the coming year. And I think you're right, there's opportunity, not just, and I think this picks up on Professor Hutton's point earlier, to look at what we're doing beyond the finishing of research. What can we do that is adding that little bit more that makes that huge difference? Also looking differently at funders and more broadly at the corporate social responsibility picture.
You'll have me knocking your doors, Rebecca.
I will.
I'll be knocking your doors.
Please do pop your email address in the chat and I will make sure I've got a note of it.
Brilliant.
So thank you so much, Rebecca. Unfortunately, my role as Vice President International calls, and I have a meeting with another external person, but Professor Padmadas has offered to take over the chair if you have a time to stay on for a little bit further. If not, please let us know, and we will be delighted to finish things up now. But otherwise, I'll hand over the chair to Sabu, and just huge thanks from me, and take care, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Jane. See you soon.
Thank you, Jane. So Rebecca, how are you doing? I mean, in terms of, I know that this is dinner time, right? So I think we want to really make sure that that health and nutrition is taken care of. But we have a number of questions. I think I'd like to really, following Nanji, I think I'd like to invite Mr. Gautam Pashupulti, I think, who is the CEO and Managing Director of Biodesign Innovation Labs. I think it would be very interesting to find his question. So please, Gautamji. Right. Right. So I think it seems that probably connecting, I guess, or Nanji, I think so. I don't know whether he's still here, but otherwise, we'd like to really call upon Mr. Piyush Freddy Segal. Please, Piyush.
Hi, hello, Professor Sabu, and hi, Rebecca. Thank you for this great talk. In fact, I would like to mention that I'm a student. I'm just a postgraduate from the University of Southampton itself. My question is that we are talking about research things, and I'm associated with a non-profit in India, which work for childcare development, and we intend to. I really admire the the things around here for the old age people here, the UK government has done. So I was thinking of implementing similar model in Vatsalya, where I'm working in the non-profit. What the specific question for here is that when we are talking about the research, are we talking just about the academic part or just the collaboration with the PhD or the thesis part, or we can collaborate providing these services to the society and be part of the research as a whole? Yeah.
Thank you. That is a very, very good question. And I guess it picks up on Nayan Patel's point earlier, and a point I didn't raise in response to his questions. So UKRI, generally speaking, funds research in a whole range of organisations, so businesses and in universities, and also in other research developing organisations, and there is a list of those on the website. In addition, if you're working in partnership with a university, certainly for standard UKRI activity that's based in the UK or is developed as a national activity, you can be a project partner regardless of what organisation you work for, whether that's a social enterprise or a hospital or anything. It gets a bit more complicated when we're working with partners and we're working on really, really specific areas of research and focus. So there we will have clear guidance. So it is clear to you whether or not you're able to engage in that way. On the whole, it is, to be honest, about partnering with a university or being a business and working through Innovate UK. Does that help?
Yes, it does help. So I understand that it's more about the innovation part in the project or the research part in the project instead of the type of organization it's going to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about making sure that, so from the funder's perspective, although it is about the research and the innovation, it's got to be about the quality of the research and innovation. And so if it's something about, for example, as you'd suggested, older people, if you're looking at doing research or creating innovation that works for older people, then you really need to understand the situation in relation to those older people. And one way of doing that is working really directly with a range of older people, but another way is by working with an organisation that's working with older people who can feed in, make sure that the research you're doing or the innovation that you're developing actually targets the genuine need. And these are the things that really help turn a good proposal into an excellent proposal.
Right. I understand. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Piyush. Rebecca, I think it's time. We appreciate that. I think we are enormously grateful to you for taking your valuable time. I think you've been in meetings the whole day, and in the evening we are not leaving you alone. So I think it's been a wonderful interactive session, and I'm sure that will our audience today have enjoyed. I think the kind of warmth and that more more opportunities for question and answers. We have also saved these chats, and I think some of these questions I will forward that to you. But I think this is now the time, Rebecca, for extending our sincere appreciation and heartfelt thanks to you for taking all your time and educating us with these wonderful opportunities. But I think usually what we have is that a very big hall, and we have people around. There is an applause and so on. So we have tried to really do that something artificially here. So I'm going to, if you allow me, this is what we are going to do. Quickly, this is just
Thank you very much, Sabu.